So we will wait in for a little couple of minutes to let people to join in. Meanwhile, I would like to propose a little check-in. So first, I want you to open the chat window so you can say hi to the speakers and share some of your expectations for today. And also we have a Menti that I'm going to share. So you can access to the Menti from your mobile device or from the computer to complete 2 simple questions so we can know you better. So first question is, which is your city? Where are you connecting from? And second question is your actual or current role. So we can see we have many Agile coaches, Scrum Masters or facilitators for this session. Okay, the last minute to start presenting. I'm going to present the this session, the topic, and the speakers that we have today. And then we start right with the conversation right away. The dynamic for this session will be conversations of the speakers. I will give some guiding questions. And for the audience listening, you can use the chat I would like to propose that you do a collective recording of these insights. So you can submit here in the chat all the ideas that you have, what you reflect from these conversations, and you can quote the phrases that you like. And the link to Menti, you can see my screen. You access menti.com and you have the code on screen. Okay, here we have the stats. So we can know better who is our audience today. Okay, thank you for answering this. I will stop sharing so we can start officially here with the presentation. So I would like everyone here, I would like to welcome everyone here. I'm your host, I'm Davian, and we are going to share a conversation with really great exponents of Agile coaching. Just in case you don't know them, I'm going to introduce them. We are taking full advantage of the virtuality here because each of the speakers are not only from different countries, but they are from different continents. And I also think that this panel here is very diverse, not only from their location and cultures, but also from their experience. So I hope we are going to have a very fruitful conversation here. All the speakers that we have today, they are leaders in their communities. They all work developing Agile leadership and helping in Agile transformations. And I think that's why we have almost 200 people connected right now. So let me introduce them very briefly. So representing our Latin America point of view, we have Camilo Velazquez. He's from Colombia. He has trained hundreds of Agile coaches. Despite of being very young, he has 10 years of experience working as an Agile coach in different countries, industries, and also scaling Agile. So how are you, Camilo? You can speak.
Hola, Ami. Muy contento de estar con ustedes el día de hoy. Muchas gracias por la introducción.
Great. Thank you to you. And from North America, we are honored to have Lyssa Adkins, who is one of the most known references in Agile coaching because of her great contributions during the emergence of the Agile coaching profession. In 2010, she published a book, which is one of the best ones on Agile coaching ever written. Everyone should have one of those books in the bookshelf. So she's connecting from her backyard in Virginia. How you are feeling today, Lyssa? And she cannot unmute herself, I think.
I'm really good from my backyard, and you can see my dog has just joined us. So there, let you know what Nicky looks like. There he is. So he'll have great things to say, I'm sure.
Yes, we are pet friendly, so he's welcome. Okay, from Europe, we have Janlén. He lives in Stockholm. Jimmy creates high quality contents. He writes books and he's a YouTuber. You should see him. He has a technical background and he was an Agile coach twice, in 2013 and then in 2016. Is that right, Jimmy?
Yes, at Spotify you refer to. Yes, so
Okay.
yeah, so I spent some years at Spotify, so I tend to gravitate towards scale-up startups in hyper growth.
Okay, I'm glad to have you here, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Last but not least, I am pleased to have Antoinette. She's probably the most experienced Agile coach in the African continent. She has been helping organizations since 1996. She's also a professional coach. She has a technical background as well, and she lives in the beautiful Cape Town. Did I pronounce it right, Antoinette?
You pronounce it 100% right. Definitely a lot better than I would pronounce any of your names or any of your cities. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just to start, instead of having a formal structure interview, I would rather to have a Fishbowl conversation. There is people asking if we are translating. Yes, you have to switch to the Spanish channel in the Zoom options, las opciones de Zoom. Abajo, para los que estén escuchando esto en inglés y quieren escucharlo en español, hagan clic. Interpretación, van a ver un globo, un planeta, y ahí pueden cambiar a español. Okay, so I would like to do this as a very informal discussion. So I would like you to pretend that this event is already over, that we are in Panama in a bar. I know that for Jimmy and for Antoinette, it's already after office time. So let's imagine that we have already a pint of beer, but just one, please. So I want you to engage in a very fruitful conversation about the current challenges of the Agile coaching profession and maybe the future. So to start off and to set some context, I would like you to tell a little bit the history. I would like to know why and how did the role of the Agile coach appear and how did it become an actual profession? Who would like to start with this?
I can go. The role made sense only after reading your book, Lyssa. Looking at my history of assignments on LinkedIn, initially I called myself a Scrum coach, Agile project manager and all kinds of weird, confusing titles. It only made sense after reading the book, and that gave me a path forward.
I'm glad to hear that, because it was actually from XP coaches like Antoinette that I learned the idea that that what we would need to do is, of course, technical practices, but also human systems practices to help teams with conflict and collaboration and everything else. So I think, you know, if we could go really far back, I think the idea of coach, the word coach, came from the XP community. She can't, Antoinette can't unmute herself.
Thank you.
Now.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So I also think that, you know, in the beginning, when we learned from the experts in software development to approach things in a different way, it was kind of a technical thing. I think I looked at the role of agile coaching when I realized, well, actually, it's a mindset change. And where with mentoring and training, you can affect process changes and technical practices. If we start looking at mindset changes, we really need to have a different approach. You know, we really need to have a much more invitational, much more gentle, a much more human-centered approach than anything else. You know, so I was really glad when, you know, with the first time I learned about the Agile Coaching Competency Framework that Lyssa and Michael Spade came up with, it fell into place. You know, so all of a sudden I had names for some of the things that I was doing or wanting to do or needing to do in teams and in organizations that I didn't actually know what I was doing and how to isolate the different bits and pieces. So
when you start in extreme programming, and Lyssa said the coach was more like initially like a technical coach, or was the coach that are you describing, Antoinette?
yes, I mean, I learned that stuff from, I was very fortunate, you know, here in Cape Town, at the southernmost tip of Africa, the team that I was with, we worked with Martin Fowler for a while. You know, one of the original 17 and, you know, one of the original XPs immediately after he had done with Kent Beck and Ward Humphries, when they had done the initial really big C3 project in the States. And it was technical practices at that point, you know, so how do you do continuous integration? We were a small talk team, you know, so how do you integrate every day? How do you make sure that everybody starts with the same workspace? We actually had a separate machine, a physical machine, where you went to go and integrate your code every afternoon, and all the unit tests had to be green before you could go home, so that you were ever only just, you know, one day. If you went completely the wrong way, you were just one day off from what the rest of your team did. So that's how I learned. You know, for me, it was all around software, and I was really perturbed when things started happening in the 2000s and people got this really heavy focus on, you know, you have to do this event and you have to do, don't tell the Scrum Alliance because I'm a certified Scrum coach these days, but, you know, there was such a big emphasis in Scrum on following all the events and following all the ceremonies. You know, it was, I thought, well, where's the emphasis on software development gone to, you know? So for a long time, to me, that was lost in the Agile community. You know, people were focused on doing Scrum and left the software practices behind, even to some extent neglected the fact that Agile is a philosophy. You know, we need to think differently, we need to approach people differently, we need to make decisions differently. So, you know, I was really glad when the emphasis came back to technical coaching, and I think that was, to me, one of the gifts of the competency framework as well, that there was a very there was an entire segment devoted to technical mastery, which brought the focus back into that.
Very interesting. And how do you see that the Agile coach, the role has changed from that original conception after many years and changes in the state of the adoption of agility and the different backgrounds also joining in to agility, and now we have Agile coaches that came from another backgrounds, not just from IT. So what does it mean for the Agile coaching?
Bueno, a ver, le doy mi perspectiva un poco transparente ante Lyssa, Jimmy y Antoinette, que me siento un poco novato hablando con ustedes, pero bueno, quería poner un poco la cuota latinoamericana en este espacio. Yo creo que hace ya algunos años que la agilidad está habitando cada vez más naturalmente otros ámbitos, ¿no? No solo hablando, digamos, de áreas diferentes a tecnología o desarrollo de software, sino también diversos negocios que nos hemos encontrado. Si bien me parece que una gran mayoría venimos del lado del desarrollo de software, hemos visto que hay muchas personas y muchos Agile coaches o Scrum Masters que están surgiendo nativamente en otros espacios de trabajo, en otros lugares muy distintos en la organización, ¿no? Esto me lo he encontrado formando Agile coaches que encontramos que vienen de áreas como HR, incluso de áreas de compras que tienen unas necesidades distintas, incluso pensando en el Agile Competency Framework de Lyssa y Michael, muchas veces cuando llegamos a esa partecita de la pata técnica resulta bastante complejo empatarlo, ¿no? Que es para mí la parte técnica cuando soy un Agile coach que no tiene ni idea de tecnología, que nunca desarrolló software, que nunca acompañó un equipo de software. Eso para mí representa, digamos, uno de los desafíos más importantes que nos encontramos actualmente.
Camilo, how does that show up?
How does that show up?
Yes, how does that show up?
A ver, una perspectiva que me he venido encontrando, digamos, en las organizaciones en estos últimos años es que si bien para mí la agilidad surgió como algo bastante de nicho, es como desarrolladores de software queriendo hacer mejor su trabajo, buscando la forma de lograr ser más adaptables, buscando nuevas formas de trabajo. Creo que en los últimos años ese éxito ha tenido un boom importante que ha pasado a otros estadios, ¿no? Es como áreas como recursos humanos, áreas como compras, quieren intentar tomar los éxitos que se tienen de esas áreas de la organización que resultan exitosas y han surgido, digamos, nuevas formas de ver la organización, ¿no? Entonces surgen cosas como Business Agility que me parece a mí están bastante alejadas ya de la idea original de para lo que surgió el rol del Agile Coach, incluso en el momento cuando Lyssa escribe su libro, y aquí me va a tomar el atrevimiento de decir que quizás en este momento hay que renovar un poco el rol del Agile Coach para que sea un Agile Coach más agnóstico. Quizás en el futuro me imagino que puede ser que hayan Agile Coaches con ciertos tipos de especialidades, que ya lo empezamos a ver. Hay personas, como por poner el ejemplo de Pía María, que se centra mucho en Agile People, ¿no? Entonces creo que van a surgir ese tipo de roles, ponele.
Sorry, can I just say a little something here? Can I just say how fantastic this technology is?
Yes.
It's the first time that I've used this technology. It's just, yeah, it keeps on amazing me. Sorry, that was a whew,
The technology and the ability of Monse and Santi translating.
Yes, thank you,
Absolutely,
interpreters.
absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I want to, yeah, since my work was invoked directly, I just want to respond to that a little bit. So I totally agree with Camilo. You know, although what's written in the Coaching Agile Teams book still is valuable and valid for so many organizations and so many places where people are starting, the state of the art of agility has advanced a lot in the last 10 years. We use Agile now in every possible place, inside of organizations, inside nonprofits, inside of our own lives, on and on. And so what I love about what Camilo is saying is that it helps us get down underneath this obsession we had with practices, which I think was necessary for a while, because people always ask me, like, what's first, being or doing? I want people to be Agile, but all they're focused on is doing Agile. And I'm like, well, it's neither, because sometimes you have to do a little bit of doing to get people to the idea that this is a little bit different. And then they go, ooh, I have to be different now. And you go, yeah, you do. And then that gets to be a little bit too much. And then they need a practice for doing it. It's more like an infinity symbol of going back and forth. And I think we can look at this over the era too, over the last 10 years, 12, 15 years or so that Agile has been more mainstream, is that maybe we're at a moment now where we can get to what are the principles and values underneath those practices? Because those practices are just one known pattern that most of the time deliver those principles and practices, right? And so I don't think it's necessarily new, but we're finally ready to do it.
We always go back to the mindset.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to, it's hard to think yourself into a new way of acting. It's easy, but you can act yourself into a new way of thinking. So I like what Camilo said as well, because in the beginning, the Scrum Master role is pretty well defined. And I think early on, the Agile coach was maybe just the Scrum Master ++. I was helping several teams. But for every year, or the last 10 years, I think the role of the coach have kind of expanded, or different people have expanded in different directions. And we're still calling us Agile coach. On my LinkedIn profile, I write bureaucracy therapist, or cultural acupuncture, or cross-company pollinator, or visualizer, or teacher. So, and I rarely use the word Agile when working. I'm talking about the practices and options, and trying to teach and help and show people how to think and reason differently, maybe collaborate differently. That role. But I do believe still that the Scrum coach is needed and wanted in some places, because you need to get going initially. And once you start doing things differently, that will propagate throughout the organization. You realize that our old ways of thinking about the bigger picture, or our culture isn't matching, or leadership isn't matching.
Yeah,
I think that okay. I would like to move on to another question. Sorry for changing a little bit. This is a concern that many Agile coaches have. There are companies that have internal Agile coaches teams as full-time employees. There are others that prefer to work as a consultant. So for the Agile adoption, what do you think that is the best strategy? Can actually an external consultant lead this change mindset that you are proposing that coaches do? Being external, or have something that have to be done from leaders inside the company. So, but also provided that the coaching is like a temporary process. Do you think it's good to have internal coaches doing this and not knowing when to move to another team or another company? What do you think that is the best strategy for this?
I want to jump on this one. First, I'm not sure I believe that coaching is something temporary. Just because your soccer team wins the tournament this year doesn't mean they don't need a trainer next year, right? So I think you can always benefit from that kind of muscle or support. However, I do believe that the value of that person diminishes over time, because from being an objective, independent helper, you gradually become part of the system. So moving around or being switched out is probably a healthy thing. But on the other question you raised, can a transformation be led by an external consultant? I have a strong opinion, no. It has to be led from the people there. However, I think it's a brilliant idea to bring out external thoughts and support to help those that movement. Yeah.
Jimmy, that kind of echoes my thinking to some extent. I mean, I've actually moved, or let me take a step back. So to me, coaches are leaders. You know, you're a leader without authority, but you're a leader. And really, my work has shifted to doing the work inside companies, which I did for a very long time, to growing leadership, whether it's amongst coaches inside a company or whether it's amongst organizational leaders inside a company. You know, we're in a late adopter market, so companies are going the agile route simply because everybody else is doing it. So very often they don't know why they're doing it. They just know that unless they do it, they're gonna be left behind. And the pace of change, I've realized that I'm not very good with working with companies like that. I like early adopters. So what does really satisfy me is making sure that those that are used to that system and those that have been working inside the system, that they get better equipped to change the system. So whether they're an organizational leader, you know, somebody that sits somewhere in a hierarchy, or whether they are a coach that sits inside the organization, or even scrum masters, you know. I mean, we started fiddling with organizational structure, which I believe is an inevitable part or consequence of wanting to grow agility. We started fiddling with that the minute we said, well, there needs to be a scrum master who's a servant leader and doesn't have any authority, but just has influence, you know, and there needs to be a product owner who brings together two parts of the business that before used to be like this, they're now like this, you know. So working with those people inside the organization and growing them so that they can make their own change, to me, is the only way that the change actually lasts. Otherwise, as an internal, I've been there, done that. As an external consultant, you come in, you make some changes, you leave, and 6 months or a year later, things have gone back to normal. The people that really changed, they've left and they've gone somewhere else, you know, and the rest of the people that are there, well, they've just slid back into their own ways.
So I have an urge to build on that, because I'm going back to this, the change is over, it's done, the transformation is done.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's ever going to be done.
Yeah.
But but even though we become an agile organization, we have a network of teams collaborating with supportive leadership structures and structures that enable us. Those are the places I prefer to work at. So I'm working in startups and scale-ups that are agile from the beginning. They never did the transformation. They were kind of born that way, but that doesn't mean they're free of problems. There's tons of new challenges because it puts people smack in the middle, right? So the people and teams have to debate, discuss, understand, agree, plan, and this is a hassle to make work. And then the challenges changes over time, so you have to reinvent everything. Yeah. So that's my strategy. I'm practicing agile coaching in an agile environment, because we're going to have more and more of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you already have.
Yes. Yeah, Camilo.
Sorry for the delay. So let me say something. Jimmy, there you already have the agile mindset, because it's a company that start with that mindset. I see a big challenge as an external coach when you are hired with the expectation of making a transformation in the company that is not agile mindset born. It's like more have a more traditional mindset, but still feel the urge to work in an agile way. So you go as a consultant or as an external agile coach to help that, but probably the mindset is not already there. And So what do you do there? You try to change that mindset, or you ask for preconditions to start helping them in the journey of agile transformation?
Lyssa, Camilo.
All right, I'm jumping in first this time. So I would say there are two things to consider. One is that there is this really important time when, as an Agile coach, you enter a new organization, or if you're inside an organization as a Scrum Master or Agile coach. Now, I consider a Scrum Master to be an Agile coach, just in the sphere of one or a few teams. But when you're inside an organization, when you move from team to team or from situation to situation, any of those times is a golden moment to be really clear for yourself. What do you need in order to actually do what they've asked you to do? And will they give it to you? And I think that having that really skillful conversation up front does two things. It lets the people who you're having the conversation with know that you know what you're doing. You know, you're entering this with eyes wide open. And number two, you're going to find out if you're going to get the things you need. Because if they're not going to give you what you need to do what they've asked you to do, then you will spend the entire time feeling like you are a failure, and it is not your fault. Except for that you accepted a situation that you couldn't actually make an impact in. So that's one place I would point people, is like that golden moment when you are moving from thing to thing, team to another team or to another organization or whatever. And the other thing I would say is just like, let's be really careful about our own motivations. You know, like, what are our motivations to sort of make organizations be more agile or enlighten them into our way of doing work? I'm coming back to what Antoinette said earlier, like, what is the organization's why? Why are they doing this? If they're not clear about that, there's no way that you are going to have any kind of North Star or any kind of sort of teeth when it gets hard, you know, to be able to move through the hard pieces. And so back to your own ambition or your own reason, like, be really clear. What do you want? Why are you there? And is it for the good of the organization? Because if what the organization wants and what you're able to provide does not come together in a really healthy way, then I think we can actually be doing more damage. Well, okay, let's be fair. We're always doing some damage, right? There's no way to avoid doing damage. We're just going to do less damage, right? And so what I get really worried about are Agile coaches who come in and they're actually more consultants than coaches, quite frankly. They have a point of view, want the organization to do it this way. Not necessarily bad as a start, but it doesn't actually have the change stick, and that's what we've been talking about. Camilo has been wanting to come in. Camilo, come on.
Por sumar algo a la perspectiva de Lyssa, quisiera mencionar que para muchas organizaciones nuestra profesión todavía es incierta y casi mística, ¿no? Y no solo para algunas organizaciones, incluso para algunos Agile coaches. Muchos Agile coaches ni siquiera conocen a lo mejor el libro de Lyssa o no conocen el Agile Competency Framework, ¿no? Porque ser Agile Coach por estas épocas es tan sencillo como ponerme en LinkedIn Agile Coach, ¿no? Eso, digamos, hace que haya como ese misterio detrás de lo que hacemos, que resulta que sea complicado y que muchas organizaciones no tengan claro para qué contratan un Agile Coach, tanto el interno como el externo, ¿no? ¿Qué es lo que estoy buscando? Y Antoinette lo mencionaba hace ratito, ¿no? Es como muchas organizaciones lo hacen porque otras organizaciones lo están haciendo y es algo interesante y tengo que subirme al bus porque tengo que ser ágil, ¿no? Pero detrás de eso, ¿qué motivaciones hay? Nuestra responsabilidad también por ahí como Agile Coaches es entender en dónde está, como mencionaba Lyssa, la organización para ver qué tipo de ayuda podemos ofrecerle. No todas las organizaciones necesitan en su momento una transformación ágil que implique montar una nueva estructura. Necesitan a lo mejor vivir otro tipo de experiencias y la responsabilidad que tenemos como Agile Coaches también está en cuidar a esas organizaciones.
I mean, if Agile doesn't change anything in terms of the health and the benefits that an organization is experiencing, then what on earth are we doing?
Might do it. Yeah, it's just moving deck chairs around the Titanic, as they say. So I want to get offer a couple resources that I've just learned about, actually. So Agile coaching is over time becoming a more real profession. Real professions have a couple things. They have known competencies that people can go look up, know about, build their skills in, and they have standards of ethics. So for a while now, we have had competencies and learning pathways for Agile coaching. IC Agile has one that culminates in a competence. You have to prove competence in skill sets, in specific skill sets, to become an IC Agile expert in Agile coaching. And the Scrum Alliance has a different pathway, but is also quite robust now. They've really improved that in the last 2 or 3 years. So we now do have those pathways, and we have many training organizations aligned with one or both of those, so that you know what you're buying when you buy training, right? So that's one, is competencies. The other is code of ethics. And I didn't know this until yesterday. I was thrilled to find out that the Agile Alliance's code of ethics for Agile coaching has resulted in a draft code of ethics, which is beautiful, clear, simple, deep, all of those things, and situations. So they give you situations and they say, here is an ethical response, here's an unethical response, here's a gray area response. So, I mean, it's a very practical tool. So, because Camilo was saying, they don't know where they're buying. These hiring managers and these hiring companies, especially, consulting companies that are just hiring to augment staff in sort of organizations, they have no clue what they're hiring for, none whatsoever. So it actually is our job to educate them. And one of the ways we do that is by building up our own skills through these known competencies and living that standard of ethics ourselves and educating them about it.
Oh, I'm gonna Google that immediately afterwards.
It's so beautiful.
I've just put it in the chat. So
yeah,
please, what they are asking is they are asking people to read it and comment on it. And I can promise you, because I've seen it myself, if whatever comments you give them, they will take into serious consideration. It's open to us as a community at this point to help shape it. So I've put it in the chat.
This is great.
Okay,
I want to flip the angle on this one, because I feel empathy for companies trying to figure out which coach to hire. But I also think that they will hire what they want, not necessarily what they need. So some companies will hire an Agile coach to challenge them. Another one to tell them what to do. Another company will actually hire a framework installer, so a safe expert. So, and if I go and say, no, if you get me, I'm going to challenge you. And mine's, no, go away. We need a framework installer. Where is that person? So even though this effort is brilliant, and I'm really intrigued by it, I think, we probably need to educate companies.
Yeah.
We definitely do. I used to do a thing here locally where I would educate the recruiting companies. I would bring in the heads of all the recruiting companies that in my local area and just say, let me give you an Agile 101 and tell you why you can't just take a project manager and throw them into a Scrum Master role. Because that's like a 50-50 chance of success, maybe at best, right? So, I would love for us Agilists to do more of that in the companies that we're involved in. And I would say, Jimmy, that you finding out they wanted a framework installer and you were providing something else is success, because the faster you find that out and the faster you do not get into a misaligned situation, that's the way to go.
Okay, that's a great discussion. I found the code of ethics is paramount, as we have Agile coaching role like spreading in different directions and have diversity of kind of Agile coaches. I think I've found this valuable. I would like to move to our last question regarding the future of the profession of Agile. So I know that you don't have the ball to guess the future, but I would like to reflect on where do you think that the Agile coaching is moving towards? What is the future? And what will you say to Agile coaches that we have many today connected, listening to you? What will you recommend them to keep providing value in the future?
Can I jump on this one? If you're an Agile coach, I think, and you want to get ahead of the herd, stop being an Agile coach and take on a leadership position. Become the CTO or CEO, because as an Agile coach, if you're only Agile coach, you're going to hit the ceiling. Because if I'm coaching leadership, they have a hard time listening to me since I haven't led an organization. I don't know their pains. So maybe just aim to be a great Agile leader, and then use that authority of experience with you. I don't know. That's my thought when I pre-read the question here.
It's interesting that you say that, Jimmy, because for the first time I see we've now in the number of years that the Agile movement has been going, we've grown people up to be those organizational leaders that Agile coaches dream of. So that's one place I see Agile coaches go. The other place I see Agile coaches go, I mean, there's been a distinction between team coach and enterprise coach, where enterprise coaches pull in a lot more organizational development, leadership development, etc. So that certainly is happening. And also I see more and more Agile coaches get professional coach training. So there's a merging for me between Agile coaches and OD people, organizational development people, and leadership people. And there's also a merging between Agile coaches and professional coaches. So there's, I believe that the Agile movement in software was just a little bit ahead of its time in terms of bringing in a really different way of running organizations, leading them, shaping them, etc. And I feel that those two things are progressing closer and closer now that there's business agility and agility has been brought into other areas of the business as well. So.
Great.
Me encanta lo que menciona Antoinette. Yo creo que la agilidad, pensando en la respuesta a la pregunta de Ami, se va a ir no alejando, pero expandiendo cada vez más allá del desarrollo de software. Y veo que una competencia está empezando a surgir muy fuerte, es el diseño organizacional, ¿no? Pensar nuevas estructuras para las organizaciones. Así que quizás el consejo que podría dar es centrarse en estudiar y entender cómo funcionan las estructuras de una organización, cómo rediseñarlas para que puedan acoplarse mucho mejor a lo que buscamos con el mindset ágil.
Yeah, I want to build on what Camilo is saying there. I think if I look at the really the real power and beauty of all these Agile frameworks and the principles and values underneath them, is that they help us metabolize change without getting swamped by change completely. And what I mean by that is that, you probably figured it out, especially in this last 18 months, that we don't get to choose much of the change that comes our way. And this is going to be ever more true because we're now in an area of what they call is 3D change, 3 dimensions. Change is pervasive, meaning it's happening in multiple areas of your work and life at once. It's perpetual, meaning it's not going to stop. And it's exponential, meaning that the changes will happen to us faster and faster and faster, 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 and faster, 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 faster. So that's what's going to happen in our lives going forward. And so if we just boil Agile down to its basics, it's just a way to help us use change for good without freaking out. And so I don't see that there is a diminishing need for people with skills to help other people use Agile philosophies, values, frameworks, because we're going to continue to have to metabolize change, and we're going to have to get better and better and better at it. And in the organizations that don't, will simply not be here. So, you know, I don't know if we'll be called Agile coaches. Who knows? I don't really care so much. But what I care about is that the organizations that have something good to contribute to society can take advantage of what we know how to know and be, and we can be there with them to help them grow. And we can stop trying to keep the larger organizations on life support. Every hour we spend keeping those organizations alive is an hour that we could have used elsewhere.
This is a very interesting insight. Sadly, we are running out of time.
And we add
so
an hour
we need
to questions in the chat.
So to close this space, I'm very sorry to have to close this fruitful conversation. I would like to ask the participants, the attendees, to answer a simple question in the chat. What was most valuable for you for this conversation? So you can start writing in the chat. And for the speakers, I would like you to say a closing word in your own native language, Lyssa in English, of course, and the translation, please.
I want to go first so that I don't go last, because these three people need the last word, because they're the ones carrying the ball forward to advance the state of the art of Agile coaching. So I will go first and simply say, thanks for your beautiful attention, everyone. I can feel you're listening out there, even though we're not interacting directly. And what a fun conversation with the three of you. What a joy. And Damien, thanks. And also all the people in the background that are making this technology happen. The translation is amazing. Vane helping us make sure we can unmute ourselves. You know, nothing happens without so many people contributing. So thanks for all the contributions.
Camilo, would you like to continue?
Por supuesto que sí, Damián. Nada, solamente agradecer la invitación al espacio, me siento profundamente honrado de haber compartido con todos ustedes el día de hoy y de poner la cuotita latinoamericana en este espacio y de ver lo linda que es esta comunidad ágil en Latinoamérica que llevamos construyendo tantos años.
Thank you. Jimmy?
I can continue. Tack så jättemycket. Ha en fortsatt bra konferens, which translates to thank you so much. I hope you have a great conference. I also feel humbled. This has been a great hour. And yeah, I wish there was one more hour to go.
Yeah.
So, thank you all.
Antoinette.
So I'll go, fantastische idee, fantastische execution. Dit was regtig fantasties om hiervan deel te wees, which translates to fantastic idea, fantastic conference and execution. And it was really a pleasure and an honor to be part of this. And the same thing, I enjoyed, and I wish we could have an hour longer, and I would love to respond to your questions as well. We really do change the world one person at a time, you know, so you have my support and my good luck and well wishes to continue your work in the continent that's like next to mine. So
Nice to hear that. And you are receiving a storm of congratulations and thanks in the chat from everyone here. And I would like to thank you for everyone for joining us in this conversation. It was definitely an exciting time putting together all the different points of view. So thank you, Lyssa, Antoinette, Jimmy, Camilo, and also the translators, Montse and Santi. We have someone doing the graphic recording, Debbie. So we will hope to see that later on in the sketch. It will be posted there. Vanessa for hosting the room. So thank you very much. We are just leaving because we have to leave the place to the next talk.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.